Hi, this is Jody Page with Lighter Capital, checking in with you from Happy Hour with the founder. We have Rob Farrow here with me as well. Rob, say hi.
Howdy. Thank you, Jody, for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet, you bet. And it's been an interesting time as we've all been dealing with over the last few months, this period of COVID, and we've been thinking about, what can we do to really contribute to, the conversation. One of the things I love about my job most, probably the thing I love about my job most is just the variety of conversations that I get to engage in with entrepreneurs. And these are going to be ones that we're considering working with. And then we obviously have a large pool of over 200 companies that we work with actively right now, 500 in our lifetime, and or something close to that. And what I think one of our most deep well of resources is just the vast amounts of knowledge that exists within the companies that we partner with. And what a better time to check in with those founders and those CEOs to get their take on what they've been experiencing over the last few months and kind of talk about how their philosophies might have changed and just some real conversations with people about what they're going through and what they think, and not just with COVID, but with business in general. And we thought that would just be an awesome way to kind of help contribute to the conversation to the broader community. And so Rob was nice enough to jump on this call with us. And I guess maybe as a starting point, Rob, I mean, you and I have been working together admittedly for a number of years at this point. I had to actually go back and see where it all started. But Rob, if you don't mind, give me and the people out there a little bit of background on Aisle Planner and maybe even a little bit of your own personal background.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So we're a 7-year-old company now, which is a crazy thing for me to say, because when you think about startups, everyone thinks they're overnight successes. But I really think that word overnight is actually defined in years, not hours. And so we started in this business. We came out of the industry that we're supporting. So we came out of the wedding and event industry. The two founders, myself and my wife, actually she was a wedding planner. I was in the event marketing space in the tech world. And, we found that there was this huge gap and a massive pain point in both industries for a layer of usable technology that wasn't just useful to the pros, but was really easy to use for the consumer as well. So you could actually create a collaborative platform to connect and plan these events. And, as simple as that may sound, it's actually an incredibly complex thing, especially when you start looking at how that impacts a business who's maybe doing 12 to 20 events a year. And that there's all these different pieces that go into play. And, there's no one size fits all solution. And that's kind of been one of the problems that was plaguing the industry when we were involved in it, that the solutions that were out there were really clunky. They had a really steep learning curve. They were very tech savvy, but not user friendly. And so that was sort of the impetus for starting the business. And we were very fortunate that we had sold a company. We were able to self-fund it to get started. And so we were able to attract some really neat talent, friends of ours that had worked at Google and Symantec, and had some great advisors. And so we dove headlong into this. We sold our house, we sold our car, we sold a bunch of stuff, and we pushed it all on the table in the gambling world and went all in. And
real all in, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to. I think as a real entrepreneur, you got to be willing to risk it all to win it all. I think folks that have an idea and say, now I just need someone to fund it. You're not ready.
You're not in.
You need to be ready to just be like, I am freaking the heck out right now because I am all in on this thing. So. Yeah. We had a really good first 2 years, a lot of momentum, things were happening. We saw our first dollar revenue come in. And then, we went into that first of what I think are many valleys of that entrepreneurial journey, where the shadow kind of hangs over you and you're like, are we going to live or die?
So just for context, when did that first dollar happen?
The first dollar happened the first day. It was awesome. So we launched the product in August of 2014. Within 24 hours of launching, we had our first customer. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then it was like 60 days before we had our next customer. And you're sitting at the computer waiting for the number to increase every day. Right. And it's demoralizing. And then you're like, I don't even care anymore. I can screw this. I'm over it. And then we got our second customer. And then all of a sudden our fifth customer. And then our 10th customer. And it's like, okay. And we started meeting with investment firms about that time, early stage seed people, and they're like, oh, if you can get to 100 customers, you can get funded. And we hit that milestone, but we hit it, the cost of that milestone was just debilitating, And come the 25th of the month, I'm out on Craigslist selling what's left of our furniture or personal belongings to cover the
Oh my
payroll
goodness.
for the 4 people I got working for us. And
Right.
I'm not taking a paycheck. And we've downsized now from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom to a 900 square foot house with our daughter, our dog, and all our belongings. And we're like, we're not seeing that Hail Mary savior of an investment or that growth we needed. So there's peaks and valleys. And it was actually about that time that we got introduced to you all, and we weren't ready yet. And it was a good learning curve for us.
Right.
Not to go right into that relationship, but that's how the company actually started. And we got very lean and very smart and very efficient with our capital, and knowing what we needed to have in order to qualify. I used you guys as a benchmark. I figured if they would give us money, then an investor would give us money, but I'd much rather have their money because I'd still own my company.
Right.
And that was kind of they're like, okay, I don't really know this Jody guy. I don't really know this lighter deal, but it sounds way better than giving away 50% of my company for 20 grand.
Right. Well, I'm glad you made the choice, man. What can I say? And it always makes it easier when somebody's already reconciled that debt versus equity conversation. And that's definitely something I want to touch on a little later. But there's a couple stats I wanted to call out, Rob, just because I had to look it up, because we've known each other for well over 3 years now.
Pushing 4 plus, I think.
Yeah. So like, when did it all start? Well, it started on December 16th, or I'm sorry, in December of 2016 is when you took your first tranche with us. Your sixth tranche came in November of 19. And in that same window, which was almost exactly 3 years, the business grew 3.5 times. And there was, in your particular case, there was no dilutive action that occurred in that same window that I recall. And so I thought that was interesting. And just a little context in terms of what you've been through and what we've been through together in this partnership. So with that said, obviously the last few months have been a whirlwind for everybody. And we're all trying to figure it out. We've had to make adjustments as a business. We work with 200 plus companies that we've all seen making adjustments to various degrees. So let's talk a little bit about that. COVID. So
my favorite word.
If there was an industry that took a direct hit, and that was kind of how me personally, and to some degree the business had bucketed the businesses. It's like, okay, there's those businesses that are just trying to survive the broader macroeconomic conditions, right? And then there's a small cut of businesses that are seeing a little bit of a bump from COVID because they happen to be in remote learning or any kind of remote engagement type platforms, that sort of thing. And then you had this bucket, the unfortunate bucket, which are the ones that took a direct hit, right? And you being in the event space, that is clearly a direct hit. So
yeah,
tell me about that first month, man. What was it all about?
It's kind of a multifaceted response to that. So part of it goes back to the origin of the company and the philosophy of our customer. Our philosophy, our customer service mantra in the company. We do customer, community, company as our three words. If it's good for all three, it's the right thing to do. That's kind of how we operate. So when we started this company, we built basically a platform of immense value, and we, in the words of many of the VCs we've spoken to, horribly undervalued it. But we didn't, because our audience is really a collection of small to medium-sized businesses, several 100,000 of them. And as much as they are the core of our business, they're a part of a much larger ecosystem that we find ourselves woven into, we're a part of. And that is that event industry. So that encompasses everything from venues to cupcake makers to event planners to florists, and then there's trickle down effect, because the florists are basically working with the farms, and the farms are working with laborers. And so there's this huge outreach. It goes like multi-layers out. So when we started the business, we were very community centric, and we still are. We sacrifice a lot for the industry, mainly because without the industry, we don't have a business. So if we cannot help to support and empower the industry, we're really just taking from something that's already suffering. So we've really kind of set ourselves up that way. So to your question about COVID and it coming in, there could not be an industry that was more in the direct crosshairs of COVID than the event industry. Everything was decimated overnight. And so we always hear people say, we're in this together. We're all in the same boat. We always joke, hey, we're in the same storm, but we're definitely not in the same boat. We're all in different boats, and we're weathering this all a little differently. You know, from our perspective, kind of a two-sided answer, like from us as a business, we're in the long game. So COVID is a short-term problem with a long-term solution. So being in a long game, our relationship with our customers lasts multiple years, 4 to 7 years on average. So the LTV from our customers is really high, and the consistency is really high. We have very low churn, because a lot of what folks do on our platform is they're putting their business in the cloud via Aisle Planner. So you know, we don't see that volatility of something like COVID, but the longer COVID has an impact on the global industry, we're starting to see sort of secondary effects of it. You know, a lot of businesses closing, which are unfortunate, but the events still are scheduled. One of the beautiful things about weddings are they're not a opportunity event. They're a once in a lifetime event. So people just say, oh, we'll just cancel it. You know, they're all, no, we're going to move it. Because they want to celebrate that union. And we're really at that amazing intersection of kind of inspiration and action and you know, collaboration. So even with the virtual nature of some of the events taking place, there's still a use case for our product in that environment. So we've been able to weather the storm in a way that we didn't necessarily anticipate that, but yet we're very grateful for.
So I guess to that point, I mean, obviously there were some adjustments you had to make with the business. So a couple questions. This, you know, did you take advantage of, you know, economic stimulus and PPP or EIDL, or either of those?
So rewind to January. We've got actually a pretty decent sized customer base in Asia. And so they started reaching out, talking about having to postpone, and do we have anything that we can provide them to help them prepare for Q3, Q4, and Q1 of 2021. And we sort of had pushed pause on development, started listening to what they were asking for and saying, yeah, we actually could go in and do these sort of feature enhancements per se that allow you to take an event and carbon copy it to a different date. Everything gets pulled forward, all the communications realign, all the timelines realign. In a sense, making their jobs extremely easy and making their relationship with their customer and that customer experience way more valuable. So we pivoted on our dev plan at that point in time, and that instantaneously took a little hit to our revenue stream, because now new things that we were using to acquire new customers were kind of on hold. So we started seeing a little bit of and then it was an intentional flatlining of our growth curve at that moment in preparation of what we saw coming into the US.
Wow.
So
wow. I would appreciate a phone call.
Well, again,
you weren't thinking of me. I don't.
What you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
We were all saying, do you fear the devil you know or the devil you don't? And you know, I'm always more afraid of the devil I don't know. So I'm like, I have no idea what this thing's going to do. What's the worst case if we prepare this way versus the worst case if we don't prepare? And so, you know, financially, it was moderate risk to us. We were in a position where we could absorb that sort of stagnation for a couple of months without having to, you know, be hit too hard. When it hit the US, I mean, it was like people were just shell shocked, you know, and we're like, okay, as a team, we were ready for it. We had started talking about it in January and February. Everybody went to a mobile or a cloud-based environment. We operate primarily in cloud-based environments anyway. But we set up everybody with, you know, laptops and monitors for home, and we actually moved out of our office on March 15th and moved to a new location. We thought COVID was going to be a 30-day deal, so we're like, well, let's move during this. No business interruption, and what are we, almost in August, and no one's been back to work since. And really crazy. We haven't missed a beat. And to your question about the PPP and the EIDL, we did take advantage of the PPP because we had anticipated a 10 to 20% decrease. And I wanted to make sure that we could weather that and keep our team, because we've got an amazing team. And, you know, I think like a lot of companies, our staff is one of our largest expenses, but it's also the most valuable expense. And so,
and to that point, Rob, I mean, because you haven't taken on any significant equity injections, this is something else I checked into, is that, you know, you've largely run the business, you know, right around, hovering around break even.
Yes.
Since I've known you, I mean, you know, there might be points where you went in the red a little bit, but for the most part, you know, you've had to be super capital efficient. Did this period, did it reinforce the philosophies that you had before, or were there adjustments that
I
you
don't
had to
think it
make?
reinforced, it validated a lot of the thesis for how we ran the business. Um, I guess for us, it wasn't, the fear factor wasn't as great as others. I think people that have been running with an irresponsible burn rate, and I say irresponsible because anytime you're running a massive percentage above your revenue and with expenses, that's not a functioning business. You're racing to the bottom or to a next milestone, but you're not building a sustainable business. We wanted to, from the very beginning, build a sustainable business with something that had transferable value, so that if and when the time came, if it was a chance to partner with someone or be acquired by something, or, you know, something greater, we didn't have to go do a bunch of cleanup and find resources to get prepared. We could say, yeah, we're good. And again, one of the really big life lessons for me as a CEO and, not having sat in the seat before was having to get sort of fiscally responsible and our accounting with you. Like we went through that whole reversal, or not reversal, but the transition from gross to net accounting and then becoming GAAP compliant. I mean, those are, we talk about that with other business leaders and they're like, you guys are fools for wasting all that time and money. I'm all, yeah, whatever. I can look at my books at any minute of any day and tell you exactly down to the penny what I got.
Right.
And, I know our budget 6 months out right now with about $100 variation. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, from my vantage point, the businesses that were impacted most severely, when you kind of step outside of that cut that took a direct hit like yourself were the ones that were really kind of, straddling the fence in terms of, is this a lifestyle business or is this something more, right? And I would say anytime you're looking at bringing in outside capital, you need to be prepared to adopt some grown-up accounting practices and, to some degree behave like you want to behave like you're already there, right? And it sounds like that served you well. So, well, maybe shifting a little bit away from the P&L and the balance sheet and, like how's it impacted you, in terms of like, where have you been challenged as a leader, I guess? I can't imagine an environment that requires leadership more than what's going on right now. So what does that look like for you?
I think the first, it's scary. I think it takes a lot for people to say, we're in uncharted waters, and we're not just in uncharted waters, we're in some really murky, creepy, like noises at night water that you don't know what's going on. So, and it's not only that you as an individual have to navigate it, which we all do, because there is this uncertainty of health and well-being. We've got our families to worry about, but then, I have this extended family, which is our company. And it's not just the health and well-being of every individual team member, it's the health and well-being of what allows them to pay their bills, which is our company. So the first couple of month or so of this, like the first 2 weeks, I'm like, oh, this will be past. And then when it got a little more serious and the numbers started coming in, and I'd be lying if I didn't have like massive anxiety attacks at night.
Right.
What's going on here?
I know. So, I've never experienced. Even in 2008, I could have. Something you can reconcile what happened. Like you're like, okay, it sucks, but I could imagine how that happened. I would have never imagined this being the thing that completely derailed everything, right? Like it never even entered my mind that it would be something like that.
The biggest disappointment for me is how this has become politicized and it's become so like divisive. And instead of unifying, it should be unifying. We should have come together over this and fought as a community to do the right thing. And it seems people are, fortunately, again, I've actually become very insulated and my world's gotten very small. So I've not missed a day of work since this started. I go to the office every day. Most days I'm the only person there. And I feel obligated to have the lights on, the fans on, and just even if I don't know what to do with myself except to go and eat pistachio nuts and look at the internet, I feel like I have to be there to keep that mental kind of focus there and be there for
that momentum. That just still dedicating 100% of your mind share to this enterprise, right?
100%, because I feel the minute you start slipping and it becomes like a secondary thing for you, or it's not your primary focus, then that's where things become at risk and things start to fall apart.
So how do you facilitate that? Because there's a lot of companies that at least partially embrace remote working and that sort of thing. So the concept wasn't completely foreign to people. It
No,
just
no,
kind
it's
of
been around for years.
accelerated what's already happened. But, when you talk about, making sure you're taking or making that concerted effort to be wholly present in your business, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily something that people are going to pick up on through osmosis, because to your point, you're the only person in the office, right? So like, how do you inspire in that situation? Like, that's tough.
So we did a little reconfiguring of our teams, starting again, knowing the things that we started to see happen, and not, again, fearing the devil we don't know. So
Right.
in January, we didn't know what was going to happen. So we started to reorganize the company. We started to put like pods in place. So there was different, like sales and marketing started incorporating customer success and tech support. And so we started to change the way reporting went, who reported to who, and how the schedules were handled, and what the roles and responsibilities were. Development went through another change as well. We actually kind of we have like dev on one team, sales, marketing, customer support, customer success on another team, and then operations on a third team.
Yep.
And those teams work nonstop online all day together. They're on Zoom calls, on Google Meetups. They're always online. They're always chatting. So there's no disconnect. It's like they're in the same room. So we've never lost momentum there. Then bi-weekly or so, two of the three teams will overlap and chat. Management team works pretty much daily together, has one call. We meet weekly to have a longer call to kind of talk about what levers need to be pulled internally, where we need, who needs support where, how to keep that momentum going. And then we do an all hands on deck team call every week. We have lunch together every Wednesday. So no matter where you are in the world, you call in at lunch, and we all have lunch around a table and just chat.
Okay.
Kind of share
it's just as a matter of routine. This is
just keep everybody on, keep everyone on schedule, and know that, I got to call in on Wednesday. And we just had our first baby in the family, which is pretty exciting. Our head of customer success just had a daughter, and what an exciting, our first family, first addition to the family of Aisle Planner. It's kind of awesome,
That is actually, it's funny. I've known a couple people that had babies in this period, and man, I talk about, I was so fearful when I had my first daughter, right?
Oh.
And there was nothing like this going on. She was relatively healthy, and even with that, it's like people would want to, come like look at her, boom out of the way. I could, I'm like, I can't even imagine like the protective reflexes that would kick in right now having a kid, right?
But great example of our family dynamic in the company too. That the gal who had the child, she lives in another state, and we have employees now in 4 states, which has been another interesting learning curve, because there's all these different employment laws that you've got to sort of start to understand at least.
Right.
And the state she's in is not very friendly to employees when it comes to maternity leave. And I'm like, just take what you need and get it done. And that sounds really bold, but I'm like, you've got our support 100%. So don't worry about it. Just as far as I'm concerned, you're taken care of. And that's like the biggest collective sigh of relief from her and her husband, because they were freaking out about, not being paid and this going on. I'm like, no. But that's one of the beauties, going back to like the PPP side of thing. Not only did it allow us to maintain that, like to dissipate any fear among everybody, because they all knew the numbers were, we saw a little dip, and I'm like, listen, we got it. Just work, focus. Don't worry about it. And it helped us really weather that storm in an amazing way. And we didn't get a lot, but we got what we needed.
But still, obviously we have insight into what people are doing in our client base, if you will. And it was a huge swath that took on, some form of stimulus funds, mostly PPP. And the last time I checked the stat, it was that like 2/3 of the 215 or so companies we work at that had received it, and another 10 or 20% had been approved or were on track to get it. And so I think, and we saw the impact it had to everybody's runway. Right.
Yeah. Well, it was, definitely, it didn't necessarily extend our runway, but it made our runway a lot smoother.
Right.
And then, what it also did was validated a lot of that financial reporting that we talked about earlier. The fact that we were able to deliver 941s for the 4 quarters, and we had everything. We had our healthcare provider plans. We had, it was like, boom, we could feel that stuff. I'm like, wow, what an insane feeling to be able to pull this massive amount of due diligence data for somebody and have it at your fingertips. I'm like, oh, now I feel a little better. Like we're actually running a company properly.
Right, right. So it didn't even occur to me, but we jumped this thing off and we didn't even get to the happy hour part of it. So I don't know what you have with you, but I have a little tasty bourbon myself.
Yeah, I'm still on. It's 155 degrees outside here right now. I'm working on a car in the driveway, so I'm still in the water. But when we do this thing legit, I'll have you. I'll dial that in for you.
All right. Well, I'm gonna sip on my bourbon.
We're gonna pretend this is bourbon something.
I appreciate it, man. So let's there's one thing I think that's interesting about your journey, and you'd already more or less figured it out by the time we started working together, and there were a couple iterations you made after the fact, but you went through a pivot. Like there was, if I recall right, you had actually kind of focused your platform more towards the consumer, almost like a B2C play. And then you shifted to more of a B to SMB, B2B type focus. Am I mistaken in that?
Not entirely. It was a little. We started as a B2B and we extended to B2C, and we really, candidly speaking, screwed up. We should not have gone to B2C. It was a absolute just kick in the. I don't remember what those 7 words are.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But you made a wrong turn and you lived through it. So totally talk to me. So what is that? Because a lot of people do it. Not everybody's willing to put it on the table like that, right? So
best of intentions, worst of implementations. We started as a B2B platform, and it was very, very. It's always been. I mean, it's been very successful, and we've had we continue to have a good run. Our intention was, well, with all of these individuals, we'll call them couples for lack of a better definition, who are type A in nature and want to get a head start on planning, we should avail them the same tools. And then when they hire a professional, they can just transfer the information to them. Well, that was our intention. What ended up happening was we saw a lot of DIY planning coming in. And DIY planning is the antithesis of what we're trying to prevent, because it weakens the industry at large. Because folks start thinking, oh, they don't need a florist, they don't need a caterer, they're going to do it themselves, and so you start cannibalizing this market we support, and we had good intentions, we just did it wrong, and we didn't know better. So we made a very public and open announcement that we made a huge mistake, and we just turned it off. And
how deep into it before you pulled the ripcord?
Oh, we had a few. We had a pretty solid customer base of consumers using our platform, like individuals using the platform, as we call them. And the blowback from the pro community was pretty strong. And we went to a basically pro only event, and in the middle of the event, we announced that we're turning it off. And we turned it off right then and there. Wow. And they were just like, "Are you kidding me? You're really actually doing that?" I'm like, "Yeah, we screwed up. We're sorry. That was right." And we said our intention was to help you, and we hurt you, so we got to fix this.
Right. And what was the timeline on that?
That was like 2018. I think we did it in the fall, October of 18.
Oh, that was okay. So that was in the middle.
Yeah, it was in the middle. I mean, we were growing at a great tick. Like, oh, this will help our growth. We could do this, and so what we learned from that experience is that you cannot provide two audiences the same product at a different rate and expect the same behavior, especially if they have different experiences and different needs. So we are slowly working our way back to that consumer engagement side of the business now, but with an entirely different approach. Right. And it's really more about information and education and guiding them into the benefits of working with the pros and giving them a direct conduit to the pros through a bit of a more fortified marketplace. So we're building more into a three-sided marketplace, which is not a very conventional way of doing a marketplace in today's online economy. Sure. As you process that, you're like, wait.
So I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk a little bit about, because 2 or 3 of the times that you've come back to us to get a little injection, it was because you had made the strategic decision that there was something specific from a development perspective that you wanted to accelerate. How do you think about prioritizing something to the extent that you would actually go to look for outside capital to execute? Like, what is that thought process for you?
So to accrue debt just to have a bigger, deposit your balance sheet look better, or like, it's stupid. Like, I just don't like debt. Like, I don't have credit card debt. I don't like the company having debt. So if we're going to go and assume some debt, it has to be for a reason that's going to grow the business beyond the debt we're taking on. There has to be a really sort of we have to visualize a path to a ratio that's a multiple of whatever debt we're assuming. So every time we've reached out to you, we've come with we've already taken the steps to vet the whatever feature we're looking at doing. We've already got all the bids from everybody we need. We have an understanding of the cost centers and we have an understanding within reason, building a couple of different models, starting from worst to, most likely to best case scenarios, what the earnout would be over the course of servicing the debt.
Right.
And we've run that model since the very first tranche we did with you. And that's been a very, for us, that's made working with you very easy, because we've built out our servicing of the debt through the next 5 years of our financial plan. And we've seen the catch. We call it the catch. We try to get the catch within the first 3 to 4 months. And once we catch it, we want to blow right by it.
Right.
And, that's what's made it such an easy relationship, because we understand the dynamics, and we are very capital efficient in how we do things, and very strategic on where and when we'll take the debt on and what we do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always very cautious to make sure that people understand that we are not the enemy of raising equity. We just feel like there's an appropriate time, to do it. We have a ton of great, equity investment, partners that we interact with all the time. And we realize that we're kind of an interim step, if you will. And now mind you, that step lasts a period of years. But most of the businesses have aspirations that extend, beyond what we can do for them, be it, reach a point of cash flow and just invest heavy in the business through that method, or, go out and bring in some, large amount of outside capital, what have you. But
we've always looked at
what do you think about equity? How has that evolved for you over the last?
I don't have a problem with it. I think everybody's, everything is worth something in the business. Like equity, money is worth something, same as skill, same as knowledge, same as connection. And I think in our case, especially, I think in most business cases, unless you've got some amazing IP that is wildly defensible, and with just enough capital, you can conquer an entire, chunk of the market. VC and P is not your path. You've got to prove a sustainable business model. And I think most tech startups think they're that. They never realize that most of the things that people are coming up with have been done in the past. And they're just putting a new name to it, and a new color to it, and a new spin on it. And so in our case, especially because we were a very, in the eyes of the VC world, we were a very cottage industry product. Weddings were very cottage industry. Until you look at the totality of what the market represents and the addressable market in its totality, like the total spend that goes on, you don't start to realize how big it is.
Right.
But it is very dysfunctional.
But it's fragmented.
Super fragmented.
Yeah.
And so for us to go out and raise against any type of real valuation, we'd have to have some kind of really compelling story behind us. And the story to me was most compelling. The story that would be most compelling was revenue and customers and growth. And we didn't have a path forward without, finding a partner that could help us afford that, whether through seed or through angel or through some kind of debt instrument. And that's why when we started reviewing the options, I'm like, we got introduced to your former CEO, BJ, from one of our advisory board members. And that's how the kind of reactions or this communication and the relationship began. And even he, one of our board advisors said, look, you guys are at this weird crossroads. You got a great product and you got a great market, but there's an entire investment community that could care less about you. Right. So you got to tell them an amazing story, or you go to someone like these guys and the numbers do the talking for you. And it was great. So again, that relationship has allowed us to focus. We now have a great story, and we're a strong, healthy, growing company, and we're leaning into that next phase of our growth, which will probably involve an equity raise, which is scary, but it's what we need to kind of go go big right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have line of sight on any sort of opportunities that presented themselves as a result of COVID? this past few months?
You know, I think more so than line of sight, it's clarity of vision. I think things we had thought about, we're now saying, you know what, that's kind of we're chasing ghosts. Let's just focus on the knowns. Right. And we've definitely sharpened the pencil on the dev plan, sharpened the pencil on the product plan. And COVID's really been good for us. And it sounds strange to say, but it's really, I think, unified the team and unified the vision of the team. So everyone's firing on the same, the folks that weren't, we didn't lose anybody, but the folks that weren't on the same page have come on board and gotten more involved. And they're now starting to see the method to the madness of how we're working together.
Right.
So that's been it's actually been a positive from all of this.
That's good, man. I'm happy to hear it. I mean, man, honestly, Rob, I was so, when this thing happened.
Oh, your first
again, honestly, like we closed that deal. I think I started at Lighter in June of 16. So, 5-6 months before we did the deal, you were like my first rash of companies that I onboarded with us. And so for as long as I've been with Lighter, you've been there. And man, when this thing first hit, I was like, oh shit, Rob. And there was the immediate reaction, and I don't think any of us knew what we were dealing with. I mean, we certainly internally were just in triage mode, trying to figure it all out. And yours was one of the first calls I made because one, it's a relationship I'm responsible for, but two, I knew you were taking a direct hit, and but I'm not surprised to see where you're at, man. I mean, you've contrary to what people may think, you got your head screwed on pretty straight.
Yeah, I didn't backwards. No, when you and Jay called, I was laughing because I'm like, man, if I were them right now, I'd be thinking about us and shit. Oh, sorry. I'd be like,
it's okay.
I'm like, dude, I have an investment in a company that serves you. You're done. But that first call was space. I was pretty stoked because you're like,
I don't know, man. I mean, people, time. Look, man, time is the great revealer, and over a period of time, a good operator is going to be a good or a bad operator is going to be exposed for what they really truly are. And
well, hopefully, we're having this positive.
As far as I'm concerned, you've earned your stripes, brother. I'll say that for sure. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk. It's been an awesome relationship and even a more awesome conversation. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to just share your experience with me and with the rest of the world. So cheers to you. And and I'm probably going to talk to you next week, but it's good to see you anyways, brother.
I'm stoked. Well, let me know. Let me know what's next, and let's keep the ball rolling.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
Bye.